Good morning, scholars. I hope you're having a great week. Um, this is week three, and one of our topics is managing volunteers. And so I'm just sharing a few insights that I have on that topic. I think Worth did a great job, first of all, pointing out that we have to recognize the difference between a volunteer who is working in the organization and doing the work in the organization versus a volunteer who is serving on the board, because they're two totally different functions. And so, and the needs of the individual serving in both capacities may be different. And I like the fact that Worth discussed the motivation theories, because I think it's safe to say that people who are motivated to work um, on the board may have a different set of motivational factors than people who are motivated to do the actual operational work. And I'm not going to go through each one of these theories, and you've probably learned them all in a leadership class. But he talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I would think somebody serving on the board probably would be at that high level of self-actualization. Um, and want to work at, I guess, what I would call a higher level capacity, more of like an executive type capacity, and would serve on the board. Um, Expectancy theory, goal theory. So he discusses all the different theories, and I would suggest looking at each one and saying to yourself, well, does that how does that theory apply to someone who is serving on the board versus someone who may be doing the work? And when you're doing your assignment, also, make sure that your focus is on board membership. And sometimes that's difficult to do because in a lot of articles, they just talk about volunteers. And sometimes that distinction is not made between volunteering as a board member and volunteering as, like I said, to do the operational side of the organization. I was kind of interested to see what has volunteering looked like, or what does it look like since the pandemic. And I ran into a couple of articles. And again, this doesn't differentiate between volunteering on the board and volunteering in the organization, but I think they're probably apply equally. But it said that the rate of volunteerism dropped, the rate of formal volunteerism dropped um, from 23.2%, um, and it dropped 7% from 2019 to 2021. So those were like the primary years of the pandemic. You saw volunteering drop. Like I said, the article didn't make a distinction. It was based on a survey that was conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau and AmeriCorps. So I would say it is a valid study, um, and a broad-based study. And so I'm sure it included people in all different categories of volunteerism. But the fact of the matter is, volunteering, and like I said, formal volunteering, that is like I volunteer for the American Red Cross. So I'm considered part of the administrative staff there, and I have a job to do there. They said now informal volunteering, where you're just helping out, somebody, helping out at the church or helping a group do something, that remains stable. But formal volunteering has declined. It declined from 2019 to 2021. I haven't found a more recent study, uh, and I suspect there will be one in the next few years. But the Census Bureau and AmeriCorps just wanted to find out, in terms of those key years of the pandemic, what did volunteering look like? Um, they said in the article that there's a lot of reasons, or a number of reasons given for the decline. It says historically, volunteering has been strongest among college graduates, married people, and people with children. However, many millennials and Gen Zers are delaying those traditional markers of adulthood, and even their peers who do reach these milestones are volunteering at lower rates. And this is according to the University of Maryland in a study that they produced in 2019. The article goes on to say younger generations today are much more likely to work several jobs, more likely to have to share places to live long past the college roommate stage of life. Um, and so these are barriers to getting involved. They are not all blessed to have the discretionary time to go out and volunteer. And they said, and I read that in another article that the financial situation of young people today is different than it used to be. It's taking longer for them to, like I said, get their own home, get established, get married, have children, and therefore the kinds of things that you tend to do once you are a bit more established, you're married, you have children, you're more mature. Well, it, younger people are reaching that point at a later age, and therefore they're not volunteering as early as, let's say, people in my generation. Uh, it said the COVID-19 pandemic also played a role as closures and fears about getting sick led some people to break their volunteering habit. And so some people who, like I said, had volunteered, they kind of slacked off during COVID, and some have not resumed. And one of my jobs at the Red Cross is it's called onboarding, and that is my primary job. I approve volunteers to work at blood drives. And I would say every week, I probably onboard probably 10 or 12 people a week. And I would say out of the 10 or 12, there's always a couple who had worked in the past, who dropped off during COVID, and now they want to come back and be, reactivated in the system. Says some did not return, instead putting their attention on their families, or as local United Ways report, their own needs to help with food, rent, utilities, and healthcare. And so a lot of them now, they've got their own needs that they have to attend to, so they don't have time to volunteer. I read an article that I thought was interesting. I'm pulling it up. And this article discusses the macro level variables that influence volunteering. And they said gender, they said women are more likely to volunteer than men. A census study shows that people who identify with only one racial category, white adults, are more likely to volunteer than adults of other ethnicities, with all things being equal. Says people of Latino ethnicity are the least likely to volunteer. And they're not given reasons for this. This is just all based on a survey that was conducted. Says that educational attainment is the single strongest predictor of volunteering. Compared to those without high school diploma, college graduates are 19.4% more likely to volunteer on average. Said parents, adults who are living with their own children under 18 are more likely to volunteer than non-parents. And marital status. It says people who are married and living with their spouses are more likely to volunteer than those who have never been married. People who work part-time have higher rates of volunteering than people who work full-time, and you could understand that. And those who are unemployed are more likely to volunteer than those who work full-time. Income, it says the difference in volunteering rates between the lowest bracket income, 35,000, and the highest, 75,000 or more, is 9.7%, controlling all other variables. And so let's see what it says about age. Historically, adult volunteer rate declines during young adulthood, then rises until middle life, after which it declines again as people age. It says when controlling for other factors, we see the early adulthood decline 2.4%, but the volunteer rate actually increases by almost 9% until ages 65 to 74. So those are just some factors that they say, they look at what's influencing someone to volunteer. And so when you look at managing volunteers, because that's our topic this week for the blog, is then what does all this say about how you manage your volunteers and manage those people who are working on your boards? If they are, in a certain age range, they most likely have a college education, uh, probably are going to be married and have families. You know, how do you manage that segment of the population? Um, to make sure that, you know, they're able to give their best and you're able to get the best from them to support the work of the board. Now, most boards only meet, occasionally. It's not like you're doing the work for the organization, which might require you to be there every week. The boards I've served on too, we met monthly. Um, 2 or 3 hours for the meeting. Now, then you had your committees as well. And so everybody had to serve on a committee. And so, and so that's going to take some additional time. So, as I said, when you look at managing volunteers, look at what that volunteer pool most likely looks like, especially as it relates to your boards. So those are my insights for the week. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it. Have a wonderful day.